Yours.
And also Waleed, we've roped Waleed into
Oh, Waleed. Okay.
as well.
Yeah, I'm back. Yeah.
I'm ready to share my screen, or unless either of you would rather do that.
Go ahead, Chloe.
Let me, oh wait, I might not be able to. Oh, maybe I can. Okay. Is everybody seeing this okay?
Yep, BICYN.
Awesome. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, it's just occurred to me that as, now I'm a little bit chaotic. As I am presenting, I can't see the notes, the speaker notes, which I think is probably fine. So we're just gonna roll with it because I've lost access to the notes that I had. Okay. So I'll start us off. So we're here today, Waleed, Kendall, and I, to chat a little bit to the group about the Basic Income Canada Youth Network. If you haven't heard of us before, that's completely fine, because we're pretty new. We just came into existence really a couple months ago. We had been sort of chatting informally for several months, and then really kind of formalized and came into existence. I think April is kind of the month that we normally pinpoint ourselves as actually beginning to sort of call ourselves this as a group. So we're really grateful to have the chance to chat here today, introduce ourselves, get to know some of the folks here a little bit better, and share what we've been up to in the first couple months of BICYN. So I think I'll keep the rest of that introductory bit short, but we hope to kind of chat for about 20-25 minutes or so, and then leave space for questions at the end or discussion if anyone had anything that they wanted to bring up. So we'll be going over introductions, so who we are, why we're here, and who Kendall, Waleed, and I are as well. A little bit more about youth, so what the youth case for basic income is, which I think isn't going to be surprising to lots of you, but just good to articulate it anyways, as well as the importance of including youth in basic income activism. Then we'll turn to what we've been up to. So some of you here have heard a little bit of this in the past couple of months, mainly from me and CT meetings saying, oh, we've done this, just sort of to curate it all in one spot and give you a little bit of an idea of what we've been doing and what we've accomplished in the few short months that we've existed as a group, and then wrap up with some next steps, some ways that people here might be able to get involved with us, as well as some space for Q&A. So let's start off with introductions, who we are as speakers. I will start by introducing myself, and then I'll let Waleed and Kendall introduce themselves, because it would be weird if I introduced them. So my name is Chloe. I look much nicer in this picture than I do here today because it's a pandemic. In my day job, I work as a researcher at the Social Research and Demonstration Corporation in Ottawa. It's a social policy research and evaluation, kind of a nonprofit consultancy, I guess. I came to Basic Income, as lots of you know. I was doing my master's research at the University of Cambridge in the UK. I finished it last year, I guess, and my research was on the basic income pilot. I did interviews with participants and specifically was looking at the project through a feminist lens. Was not a basic income advocate before doing that degree, was interested in it, thought it was a cool concept, but then after having spoken to people in the pilot, really became an advocate because I heard time and time again just how much it had changed people's lives. So that's a little bit about me. I am not good at introducing myself, but one of the technically co-founders and co-chairs of the Basic Income Canada Youth Network. Waleed, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Waleed Herzala. I'm a recent graduate of the Smith School of Business at Queen's University. I graduated with a Bachelor of Commerce from there just last year. And actually, so my background in education's always been in business. Didn't really have much of a policy background or politics in any of my classes until my final year when I got to branch out really and did an independent research project with Jamie Swift. If any of you know him, I was an adjunct lecturer at the Smith School of Business at the time. And I was interested in the topic of basic income, reached out to him, worked on this research project, found it incredibly interesting and fulfilling. Now that I've graduated, I work in management consulting, so very different from the basic income space, but policy and basic income are what I'm really passionate about. So I reached out to Jamie and some of my other contacts, was put in touch with the Basic Income Canada Youth Network, and then Chloe and Kendall put me in touch with OBIN, and that's how I'm here today. So very excited to get to know everyone.
Awesome. Thanks, Waleed. Kendall, take it away.
Hey, hello everybody. My name is Kendall. I use she, her pronouns. I'm calling from Calgary, which is my hometown. Outside of basic income land, I'm a Master of Social Work student at Carleton University, currently working on my thesis research, and my social work experience is mostly in the disability sector and disability justice. So yeah, nice to be here.
Great. So onwards, quickly, who are we? Who are BICYN? So I got the month right. It is April. So we were established in April 2020, and basically the Basic Income Canada Youth Network is a group of young people. We define young as 35 or under. It's a bit of a generous definition, but one that we're happy with. Across Canada, who are passionate about a basic income and want to see it realized. So our mission is to mobilize young people to advocate for and celebrate the benefits of basic income. And we do that through sort of a three-pronged approach, which is education, community building, and activism. Our motivation for doing that, I think, which will resonate with lots of you here, is because we want everyone to have enough income to meet their needs, to participate meaningfully in society and live with dignity. And in addition to that, we want youth to have an active and valued role in the basic income movement. Kendall's going to chat a little bit more about that later, but we know that youth are interested in basic income. We know that they want to be involved, and we want to sort of begin to craft space for youth to be involved in that way. And we do all of this working in partnership with other basic income groups and organizations. I think it's clear we do work closely with OBIN, and I'm grateful to get to be on the OBIN C team, but we also work very closely with the Basic Income Canada Network, as well as Coalition Canada, and increasingly and hopefully more in the future with other provincial and local groups as well. Normally at this part in the presentation, we do a what is basic income, but I don't think we need to do that for this group today. So what I will just say is sort of, in addition to the sort of the standard, what we know a basic income to be, sort of some of our principles that we bring particularly to the basic income movement, and sort of some of the pieces of basic income that we feel are particularly important. One, that basic income is an act of solidarity, so that basic income is a really important part of, but ultimately not the only approach to economic and social justice. So I think viewing basic income and this movement as being an allyship with movements for disability justice, for gender justice, for racial justice, for decolonization, so on and so forth. That basic income is complementary. So again, I think something that will resonate with lots of people here, but our vision of basic income is one that is pursued in tandem with strong and accessible public services, with living wages and other progressive policies, and one that's grounded in dignity and justice. So again, grounded in the idea that everybody should be able to afford the necessities of life and participate meaningfully in their community. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Waleed, who's going to chat about the youth case for basic income, and then to Kendall about the role of activism. So take it away, Waleed.
Thank you, Chloe. I think I won't dive too deeply into this because I think most people are very familiar with the youth case for BI. But in short, I think this sentence here at the top summarizes it really well. And it's that basic income would provide stability for young people to plan for and invest in their futures with less fear and uncertainty. I think, to me, the way I see it, I think the case for a basic income for youth is very similar for the case of a basic income more generally. It provides people with a cushion, it allows people to take risks, and allows people to just live life with dignity and plan for their future in a way that people facing a low income might not. But I think there are a few things, though, that make this make these issues sometimes disproportionately affect youth. The first one being student debt. So I think if you kind of look at the statistic there, the Canadian student debt was $28 billion in 2018. I think speaking for myself, Chloe, Kendall, it is quite a burden for a lot of people to be facing such a tremendous amount of student debt, and it causes a lot of stress that takes away from people's ability to really invest in their future in such a critical period of their lives. I think other factors to consider is the disproportionate number of youth who are involved in precarious work. And as we know, I think the rise of precarious work, I think, is one of the main reasons why the case for basic income has grown so significantly in recent years, and that our current social safety nets kind of let too many people fall through the cracks, especially precarious workers. I think, Chloe, if you can go over to the next slide. Perfect. I think there's also something to be said about the intersectionality between basic income and several social justice causes, particularly for those who are marginalized in the labor market, Indigenous youth, racialized youth, disabled youth, and queer and trans youth. I think that's something we'll talk about in a little bit more detail in a few slides, but really interested in kind of seeing how can we rope in youth who are maybe involved in not so much in the basic income movement, but in some of these other spaces, and how can we really make them advocates for basic income as well, because there is so many benefits that that can benefit these groups that would stem from a basic income. And then finally, I think, Barbara, you touched on this earlier today as well, but there's a lot to be said about the link between basic income and climate justice, reconsidering that relationship between paid labor and consumption. That's something that we're trying to look into a little bit more in the future as well.
Okay, my turn. So while there is a really clear case for basic income for youth, about why youth would benefit from a basic income, there's also a big case for why youth are important in basic income activism and activism more broadly. So we think that this is kind of our case for why we exist, I think, in a lot of ways, why the youth network is important in the basic income space. The first thing being that young people account for a really, really large voting bloc in Canada. In fact, the millennial voting bloc is the largest voting bloc in Canada, 18 to, I think it's 38-year-olds, represent 37% of voters in Canada. And so we have a lot of voting power to bring change. And so getting basic income, getting youth explicitly on board with basic income is really important in our political activism. We also know that young people are more likely to support basic income policy, and so it is a pretty easy fit. And despite the fact that young people can be really important in inciting political change, and that young people are on board with basic income more broadly, there's also a distinct lack of young people in basic income spaces, as I'm sure many of us are familiar with. And so we're hoping that having this youth network will help with addressing that gap. This is one of my favorite quotes. So this is from Chloe's op-ed in the Ottawa Citizen from earlier in the year. So I'm just going to read it because it kind of fits nicely with, again, this youth case for basic income and youth case for activism. So this slide is, there's a picture of Chloe holding up the actual physical paper with the op-ed on the left-hand side. And then the quote reads, so quote, "Youth in this country are powerful, intelligent, and resilient. Many of us will live through not one, but two economic crises before turning 25. We deserve to be heard in conversations where decisions that will drastically affect our lives are made," end quote. I think it's Chloe's next is going to tell us a bit about what we've been up to. So
you're going to go. I think it's you that your slide is the
first.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. Well, okay. So we've split this section up of what we've been up to into the sort of three kind of pillars of what we do. So education, community building, and activism. So we've been really excited to be invited to speak at webinars and virtual events like this, and talk about basic income, talk about youth activism. So we've been partnering with groups like Engineers Without Borders Canada, the Tamarack Institute, Basic Income Calgary, the Ontario Council for International Cooperation, and just recently with MP Leah Gazan's Motion 46 campaign. We've also, earlier in the year, we held a couple of our own education sessions by and for youth, and we're hoping to get back into that in the future. And we have some upcoming sessions with the NDP town halls on basic income, the York Food Policy Council, and a webinar in November partnering with the Canadian Federation for Students and Basic Income Nova Scotia on students and basic income.
Perfect. Thank you, Kendall. The second part of this section about what the Youth Network has been up to is about community building. And I like to think about this as probably two things. The first being connecting youth with other basic income groups. And the second thing being connecting with other youth groups that might not be basic income focused, but where a mutual relationship could be beneficial to both the basic income movement and some of those other movements that we talked about earlier today. So we're really focused on growing and cultivating that network of young people across the country who want to see basic income become a reality. One of the ways that we've been doing this is just putting together a mailing list where we send out monthly updates on what our youth network and other basic income groups have been up to, and that's to up to 300 people just over the past couple of months. So really excited to continue growing that, because we think it's a great way to really keep people in touch with what's happening. That kind of brings us to the next point of connecting young people interested in getting involved with the movement with basic income groups, and that's actually exactly how I found my way to the AGM today. So for a little bit of context, I had reached out to Jamie, who I'd worked with at Queen's, who connected me with Robert, who was involved with the youth network. And he just told me to sign up for the youth newsletter. And within this newsletter, there were opportunities to get involved. So I reached out to Chloe and Kendall, and then they connected me with the OBIN team, who was looking for people to help them plan the AGM. So something as simple as just sending out a monthly update about what the group has been doing, what other basic income groups in Canada have been doing, has really provided me personally with an avenue to get involved with the basic income community in a way that I've kind of been looking to do for a long time, but didn't really see a way to do that before being connected with the youth network. So I guess thank you, Chloe, Kendall, and everyone else who's kind of helped me get involved. It's been great. And finally, just to touch on the fact that as part of this community building process, we've been really collaborating with a lot of different organizations, including OBIN, including the Basic Income Canada Network and Coalition Canada. We supported several of the case series that these groups have been working on. And you can see there's a headline from the Toronto Star about Coalition calling on federal Liberals to bring in a basic income to address gender inequality. Again, touching on the importance of how basic income intersects with so many other important social justice issues.
I was muted. Thanks, Waleed. And for the last point of this, so Kendall touched on education, Waleed on community building, and sort of our last pillar, so to speak, is in activism. So this is an area that we've been pretty busy in. One of the first kind of actions that we took as a group, which some of you are familiar with, was that we joined forces with Senator Mary Lou McPhedran's Youth Council to co-author a letter to Justin Trudeau and a number of cabinet ministers in support of the Senator's call for a guaranteed livable income earlier this spring. And we got signatures from individuals, lots of academics, but also lots of youth-led and youth-serving groups and organizations across the country that ultimately represented over 500,000 young people. That was a huge win for us. More recently, in early August, we co-hosted a letter writing day of action for International Youth Day alongside, again, Senator McPhedran's Youth Council, but then also the Ontario Council for International Cooperation's Youth Policymakers Hub. And on this day, we provided a letter template to young people and encourage them to write their MPs in support of a basic income. And just about 100 young people did that, which is the graphic that we've got on this saying, thank you, the push for basic income, 100 letters sent. We're also supporting Coalition Canada's Lobby Week this upcoming October, which has been including creating youth-focused content for parliamentarians. This presentation may be one iteration of that. And then finally, engaging with media about the youth case for basic income. So we've done one op-ed. I think we're hoping to do also had the opportunity to speak on radio a couple of times, and then hopefully some more things coming up. But we are prepared to do that should it be something that's necessary. And then I think back to Waleed now for wrap up and next steps.
Yeah, definitely. We're really hoping to stay in touch with a lot of you and continue growing our network and continue connecting with other basic income groups. So if you are interested in getting involved with us or just building a relationship, ask that you join our mailing list, stay in touch with what we're doing, and we can hopefully find opportunities for collaboration in the future. Tell any youth you know about the Basic Income Canada Youth Network. We are still a fairly young organization. And not a lot of people know about us. We're really trying to get the word out there that there is, this organization specifically focused for youth looking to get involved with the basic income movement. So please tell any youth you may know about us. And then just actively invite youth into basic income conversations. I think it's so critical that even though this is an issue and a movement that is really important to youth, and has so much potential to help youth, I think youth are still kind of like under-penetrated in the space when it comes to activism. So that's all that we have for now. If you have any questions, we would be very happy to answer them.
Go ahead, Tony. Yeah.
Thanks, John. I'm wondering if you could tell us if there are ways that we can help you. We in OBIN and in Ontario and in the coalition across the country can help you with your outreach efforts to more youth.
Oh, we go for it.
Okay, I'll start, and then if other people want to tack on. So, I mean, a couple of ways. I think the biggest one is encouraging young people that to sign up for our newsletter and become a member with us. That's sort of our main way of communicating with people right now is over email through our newsletter. We've come a long way in the first couple of months, but we know quite confidently that there are lots of youth that we still aren't reaching. We're hoping to do a pretty big recruitment campaign, both for our steering committee and then members in general this upcoming fall, and we'll be doing sort of a really broad reach out. But share our stuff within your groups. Encourage young people that even if they're not like basic income young people, send our membership, sign up. That's the biggest thing. I've also just put our email address in the chat box, and there are lots of things, and even sort of hearing today, things that other people have got on that we would love to get involved in, but just didn't know that they were happening. So I think we're also open if people are interested in sort of figuring out ways that we can collaborate to having a conversation. So for instance, with the curriculum piece that was talked about earlier with Lisa, we had actually had a conversation about that a while ago with whether it might be worth sort of trying to put together a curriculum that we can share with schools. And the fact that that's something that's been going on already, I think it's fantastic. So I think sharing our content, but also just we're happy to pick up the phone or have a Zoom call and chat about what you're doing and what we're doing and see if there's any ways that we can be working together. But Kendall, Waleed, if you have other ideas, please share them.
I don't know whether I have a question or a comment, but I was a little bit surprised, and maybe it's the nature of the presentation you're giving to us. But, often with youth, I think you can play to their passion for social justice. And I didn't see that in there. And, I just think it's so important for our society to kind of help stimulate that caring about fellow citizens before we lose it altogether?
I can maybe speak to that a little bit. I think that you're right that there is a lot of passion for social justice and environmental justice, and lots of different issues with youth in Canada. I think something that we've been really conscious of is partnering with and aligning with other youth-led movements to talk about how basic income can support their work, but also how they can support ours too, like that where there are sort of those avenues for mutual reciprocity. We had a number of youth-led climate action groups sign on to our letter in May, which was really exciting. And I think that there's some great conversations that are happening that Jim is facilitating around ecological transition and basic income that we're involved with. And yeah, I think you're right. I think our really kind of short and sweet presentation is on like why youth should be involved in the movement. But we're conscious that this is a group that's already sold on basic income and the principles and the justice aspects of that, and rather, so we're focusing a little bit more on why youth should be involved in this type of group, right? About how we can get young people to be engaged with groups like OBIN, who are already doing so much work in the basic income space.
I'll add to that, because I think it's a good, and I think it definitely is partially a nature of sort of audience, and that we're not, I mean, you're all, please join our newsletter, but most of you are not trying to recruit. We're not trying to convince you, but we're doing some prepping of materials and recruitment materials for our steering committee right now. And it just made me think of, because there is a section in there saying that we approach basic income through a social justice and an anti-oppression lens. For Kendall and I, that's both very much our backgrounds, coming from those backgrounds. And so I think that is sort of our lens and our orientation. If it wasn't clear enough there, I think that that's helpful for us to know that that's what we should maybe be bringing out more clearly, because we've had some internal conversations around that as well, as how firmly do we put out the message that part of our personal motivation for basic income is challenging capitalism and the connection between the labor market and income security. And that's not always the most politically attractive message, but I think it is the one that we personally come from. So it is a balance, but I think I appreciate what you're saying and sort of what messaging is going to be resonating with young people.
Thank you for those comments.
Barb?
A question. So demographically, I know you'd like to represent youth from across the country and bring them in. And I'm just wondering, are you getting there? Is it still too early to really be able to answer that question? Or are you finding you are reaching into pockets across Canada and being able to diversify? And how can we help?
I was waiting to see if Kendall was going to talk first.
I was just going to say, I'm the token Albertan, actually. Kind of the we're really early days, I think, and recognizing that this is our group right now, and we have reach with more youth, but that we've been really intentional about kind of building our steering committee slowly and not rushing into things. It is definitely a consideration for us as we're looking to build our steering committee and build our recruit more young people to be involved in the leadership of our group, that we'd like to have the diversity of youth in our country represented, which does for sure include regional representation. And so as soon as we have our recruitment materials finalized, when we're looking for steering committee members, we'll share them with you and with the coalition who has reached across the country to make sure that we are accessing young people who are all over.
And one thing to add, so I think beyond our steering committee, we do have pretty wide within like membership. We are, I think, getting there in terms of having pretty good regional representation. I'm thinking the letter writing campaign that we did with OCIC, we collected postal codes for that. So we actually have an idea of sort of all of the people who actually sent out letters for that. And we had young people send letters from all 10 provinces. We didn't have anybody send them from territories. And I think we do still have more work to do in terms of intentionally tapping into sort of more provincial or local groups to expand that. But at least for me, that campaign and knowing that we reached all 10 provinces was an indication that the interest is there, and we're getting there in terms of reaching out better regionally. Adam?
Sheila had her hand up as well.
Oh.
Who wants to go first? Well, I'll go. A great presentation, and thank you, all of you, for the great work that you're doing. I'm just wondering if in your work you've experienced any pushback with the idea that youth may be too entitled, or that they should just be working harder, or to stop hanging around the pool, as one politician put it all summer. And if so, how you've challenged that narrative.
I think Chloe should speak to this one. And I will say that I think if you'd like to hear a little bit more of a detailed description of how we've responded to those calls, there's a podcast that Chloe spoke on with Senator Kim Pate's podcast, where she really talked about who's allowed to be lazy. I'll find the link and send it while Chloe addresses that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a targeted question because you know the answer to that already, Adam. So we haven't gotten, we've gotten no pushback from basic income people. Basic income people have been amazing. We love you all. What a welcoming and warm group who have been pushing for youth to be involved so strongly, such that there wasn't, I think, an option for a youth network to exist. It was going to happen because so many people here wanted it to happen. Outside basic income land, I think, is a bit of a different story. The op-ed that I wrote for the Ottawa Citizen, which started with a senator got up in the Senate recently and said that CERB was going to make young people lazy and lay by their parents' pool, and that's ridiculous for all of these reasons. That got some attention on Twitter, as it does, and some comments were made again about young people need to be out of their parents' basements and feeding out of the trough and playing video games, all of those things. I think we hear all of those things. I think, I would say to go, and I agree with you, Craig, that I'm also okay with just being lazy. It's definitely something that we've heard. We haven't gotten it from in basic income land. I think we're all pretty confident speaking to why that argument is ridiculous, both because we know that young people are more educated than ever, people aren't inclined, I think, to just laze around, even though I personally don't really care if they do. And that evidence, we know evidence from basic income pilots shows that that's not actually what people are inclined to do when you give them money. And the fact that people think that young people are particularly vulnerable to that is completely grounded in stereotypes and, quite frankly, ageism. So I think we've encountered it. Don't expect it to go anywhere unless we see some massive cultural shift in the next little while. But yeah, I don't know if that gets at your question.
Sheila?
I'm next in the order.
You are.
Similar theme, actually. I have a project for you to consider. A couple of weeks ago now, I'd been thinking for a long time of writing something for my demographic, the Zoomers, seniors kind of thing. I finally did a radio interview with Libby Znamer on Zoomer News. It was awful. I mean, she was awful. So I'd like you to write an article for Zoomer, for older people, entitled Dear Parents and Grandparents. This is not your labor force. This is not your world anymore. I mean, I don't know if any of you know the whole Zoomer magazine thing, and it's really popular, and seniors are a huge voting bloc, and they read this stuff. And every once in a while, they'll come out with lobbying for something for low-income seniors as a few crumbs, but mostly they're lobbying for people who are well off to be able to keep as much money in their pockets as possible and never pay tax on it, and keep our privileged lifestyle so that when the tourist industry comes back into play,
Yeah.
they can all go off on vacation again and hit the cruise ships. I was just so annoyed with this. Like, and the first comment she made was when I said that we already have basic income programs in Canada for seniors, the first comment was, well, but they've earned it. That's completely different than throwing free money at younger people.
I think that speaks to I think Craig's trying to stir things up in the chat. That speaks to two things. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot, but one, because when I wrote this op-ed, I got a lot of crap, I think, because it was coming from a 24-year-old, and the assumptions that came with, well, if this 24-year-old writing it, she must want a basic income, and she must be one of the lazy people who just wants to sit at home by the pool, which I don't have, blah, blah, blah. But when you hear that discourse, if you hear it, which maybe many of you do, I think challenge it. You're all in positions where you're involved with local groups, you're involved in advocacy, and basic income or not, when you hear the young people are lazy narrative, challenge it, because people are more likely to listen to you than they are to me. And then the second part of that, in terms of, I think, what you can do, and kind of one of the things that we've been thinking through a little bit and don't have really firm things around is sort of the design elements of basic income, and what does it mean to design a basic income that is, youth friendly, quote unquote. And part of that for us means making sure that any basic income that we see implemented starts at age 18, and sort of challenging the idea that late teens, early 20s is a group that for whatever reason shouldn't be eligible for a basic income. There isn't a lot of sort of youth or age-related research that exists on basic income. There's a little bit in Evelyn Forget's book that sort of postulates, while early 20s, it's a really key time period in terms of attachment to the labor market. And I don't think that there's a particular appetite in Canada to see a basic income for like 25-year-olds plus. But for us personally, I think we want to make sure that whatever we see is truly inclusive of young people. So just another thing to think about. Are there any other questions?
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands up at this point. Okay, maybe thanks tremendously, Chloe and Kendall and Waleed. That was an excellent presentation. Once again, really good questions. So maybe we should actually move on. And just a reminder, I think, and we've been recording the sessions. So yeah, if anybody who maybe wants to revisit some of it or tell your friends about it, that'll be available, I think, on the OBIN website in due course. So what we wanted to spend the next little bit of time on before we move into the business meeting portion is just to get a quick report back from John. I think we had 4 groups. Is that correct?
That's right, Jim.
Okay. Maybe I would ask each one of the 4 group facilitators, just in the interest of, by the way, I think we mentioned each facilitator was taking notes, or somebody in the group was taking notes. So we'll be collecting those up to kind of synthesize and help us as we proceed with the plan for the next year and ideas about moving OBIN forward. So we'll be using your input that way, but realizing, we just got limited time today. I'll ask each one of the 4 groups to just report from the facilitator, maybe 2 or 3 highlights, and then a couple of minutes for additional members from the group to add in if they wish, if that sounds all right. So actually I was in group 1, which was facilitated by Chloe. Did you want to give us a few highlights, Chloe?
Yes, sure. Yeah, lucky you, you get to hear me talk more. So we were in the group that was chatting about fundraising. There were lots of really good ideas that came out of that group, and I took pretty good notes, so I won't go into too much detail, but we talked about sort of what we would spend money on, like pie in the sky. OBIN had all the money in the world. We talked about sort of communications and marketing, things like social media advertising, ads in newspapers, creating promotional videos. We also talked about the feasibility of funding research, so either like community-based or more policy-oriented research on basic income. And Jim noted that he's been impressed by sort of what the basic income movement has already done in that space with not that much money, thinking of policy options. I would also add the Basic Income for Work, the case series paper, which was really good. And then we talked about sort of dissemination, knowledge translation, mobilization, as well as the potential to hire staff for assistance, recognizing that volunteers are great but can't do everything. Chatted about ideas to improve our funding base, so sort of making it easier to donate on the website, which I think has been done already with thanks to Richard, and then also making it kind of reminding people and providing those regular reminders that people can donate, can set up to donate on a monthly basis. And then sort of being clear about what actually it means to donate to OBIN and what it means, for instance, to donate to OBIN versus BICN, and sort of the implications of donating to a provincial network. Chatted about seeking out sort of private sponsors, donors, in my words, quote unquote, rich people who support basic income, as well as sort of an OBIN event or something that could be a sort of like an OBIN fundraising event. Chatting about connecting to local groups to help connect, as well as GoFundMe. Quickly, we talked about annual fee being raised from $15 to $20, understanding that members could contribute more or less, and the consensus was yes. And Tony said maybe even $25. So that's the quick fundraising update.
Okay, thanks. Great summary, Chloe. Anybody else from Group 1 want to add a point or two? I think so. Chloe really summarized things well. Okay, I'm not sure the order here, 2, 3, 4 group numbers, but maybe I'll call on Craig to report next from your group, Craig.
Thanks, Jim. So our group was Monica, Katerina, Lisa, and Kendall, and myself. And we were looking at question number 1, I believe. And I think, I'm just trying to read it out to here. Where is it? So I took the notes. How to advance the membership and working with grassroots, politicians, and so on. So Monica talked about the importance of sharing personal stories, especially the stories of people who are currently on Ontario Works. And why that is important is that people need to hear about the trauma that some Ontario Works recipients experience dealing with caseworkers, that not enough of that story is being told. So sharing of personal stories and highlighting those people who would benefit the most from a basic income was one point that was made. Everybody in the group thought that the case studies were excellent resources for engaging with new people, because they allowed, for example, if working with politicians, you can then, or working with new people that you meet in the community, you can kind of use the gentle rain approach, which was described as sharing little bits of information over a long period of time with new people. So if you meet somebody in the arts, I think Lisa was saying, like, in your community, you can be like, hey, go check out this case study. This will help you understand where we're coming from. So those tools and resources that have already been built and are on the website were everybody in the group was like, this is a really important resource that we can keep using to organize and bring new people in, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time. So if you see the letter that are in the arts, or you see the letter for the youth, you can ask other youth or other artists or women to read those letters if they need an introduction. Katerina talked about setting up a meeting with the youth minister and hoping to bring Kendall along, because Youth Minister Chagall, I think it was, I might not have said the name right, but so there was some actual liaisoning going on in the chat room, which was good. So they were going to try to make that happen. The other thing that was mentioned was finding more champions within each of the sectors. So if it's in the women's community or in the arts community, the youth community, is finding those leaders in those communities gives a lot of credence to the arguments around basic income, and try to get more of those. So what I'm seeing is not only the grassroots people who are experiencing the issues that we want basic income to address, like those people on Ontario Works, but also the champions within the sectors. More of these kind of spokespeople was mentioned as important, that combination. So yeah, that's pretty much what we got to talking about in our group. Did I miss anything, group members?
Jim, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm just calling on Waleed to summarize from his group.
Yeah, definitely. So I think our group discussed the topic of creating realistic goals and supporting objectives for OBIN in the upcoming year, and in 3 to 5 year time horizon beyond that. Unfortunately, we didn't have a ton of time, so I don't think we really got into specifics too much, but there were a few themes that emerged that I think are worth highlighting. The first is just that even though there is a lot more that OBIN can be doing, and the road ahead is very long, people seem to be generally impressed with the work OBIN has been doing, and wanted to note specifically that the support to local groups has been really appreciated. Even things as simple as being able to use the OBIN Zoom, and John helping there whenever he could. That stuff did not go unnoticed. So I think there was a sense of it's important to also acknowledge the great work that's already been done. The second point that was brought up was you just need an understanding of what comes next, given the state of basic income today. I think a lot of us were disappointed that it wasn't mentioned in the throne speech at all. So the focus moving forward should really be on increasing visibility on the issue, because it wasn't even brought up by the government in the recent throne speech. And how do we kind of increase the visibility about this discussion, both at a provincial and national level? And then finally, the discussion we started to get into, but unfortunately didn't have a chance to dive too deep into it. And if I mischaracterize anybody's points here, please do speak up. But essentially, I think there's something to be said about advocating for a basic income at the federal level versus the provincial level. So on one hand, since we are an Ontario group, I think I originally brought up the point that, hey, do we focus at the provincial level? Do we try to get our voices heard with provincial government officials? But then Sheila and others brought up the great point that this should be a national discussion, and this shouldn't be. We should get sharper on our objective of, this shouldn't be us advocating for an Ontario basic income, but rather this should be Ontario. This should be an Ontario voice combined with voices from other provinces about getting a national basic income in Canada. So I think if I kind of take a step back there, I think it's important over the next year to get sharper on where are we trying to get our voice heard exactly, and which individuals can we reach out to have an outsized impact on kind of furthering our objectives. But is there anything else? Is there anything else that I missed? Sheila, Richard, Ron, and sorry, I'm blanking on who the last member of our group was. But is there anything you'd like to add?
Okay, I think that last point, Waleed, is really important about thinking nationally and how we need to contribute from the local and provincial level to the national efforts to get things moving ahead. Okay, thanks. And the fourth group was facilitated by Adam. Did you want to give us some highlights, Adam?
Yeah, sure. So our group talked about expanding OBIN's membership. And one of the things that came out was that the resources and sort of ways to get involved with OBIN are there, but only if you look for them. So you sort of already have to know about basic income. And so we were talking about how to address this. And one of the themes that came out was that OBIN should really support expansion at the local level. So connecting local groups with each other through internal relations and providing sort of local groups with resources, for instance, toolkits and how to start a local chapter. And another theme that really came out was relationship building. So reaching out to other groups and advocacy organizations to sort of endorse basic income. For instance, faith groups were brought up. But the point was made that those relationships really have to be reciprocal. So OBIN really has to also think about what they can offer other groups and not just what other groups can offer us. And how, if we do expand and become more diverse, how are the structures in OBIN? How will that change OBIN? And what will that look like? So those are some of the themes that came out. I don't know if I'm missing anything. Andrea, Barbara, Neda, Lance, and Belle, feel free to jump in.
Okay, it sounds to me like all four groups hit on some really key points. So once again, we'll collect up the notes from the facilitators. We have limited time today, but we'll work with these ideas and find other opportunities to share the thinking about how to move forward strategically, but also get further input, especially from groups perhaps that aren't on today's meeting. Okay, well, thanks for all that. And thanks once again for the wonderful presentations today. It's been a very full day. We're moving into the business meeting portion. If it's okay, Joe, I'll just kick things off here in the interest of time. And Joe's actually going to be reporting on things as we go through the meeting. We have a sort of...
I'm sorry, Jim.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I could just interrupt for a moment.
Yeah.
There's really no point recording from here on, is there?
No, I don't think so.